This is Dead Rising 3. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here on the Series S for this third main entry in the Dead Rising franchise? Well, it's 720p, 30 FPS. And yeah, this was a rather interesting offering. It was one of the launch titles for the Xbox One. And now we actually get a smoothed out level of fluidity as you take on these absolutely massive hordes of zombies in this. Really, at the time, kind of technically impressive. Like, what they were doing in terms of, like, the zombie crowd density and whatnot was really genuinely impressive. Like, I remember playing this when it came out on, like, the Xbox One right off the bat. And this, to me, was, like, one of the showcases of, like, the actual technology that was changing between generations, because you were able to have these massive, seamless open worlds that were just absolutely stuffed with high quantities of zombies. Like, if you played the Dead Rising franchise and, you know, seen it kind of grow and change from that original release on the 360, you know, that first one, where there was lots of loading, and then, you know, Dead Rising 2 got a little larger, and then, you know, we got off the record. Yeah, and then to see just the series over the course of one more generation pop up and become like this large open world with, you know, like there's no loading really between the areas at all. I think the only loading you come to is if you're doing some sort of, you know, in like area cinematic moment or something like that. But other than that, you are, you know, exploring this large open scale environment and doing so really however you want to, which is really quite exciting. So this is quite a bit after the events of previous Dead Rising titles. You play as Nick Ramos, and you are attempting to survive in, well, I guess it's not really like Los Angeles, but like, you know, kind of a similar type area. And you are fighting against like these huge hordes. There's all this mystery going on. And it really is quite an interesting offering in terms of like seeing the narrative kind of get revealed, figuring out what exactly is going on. So another cool thing is that you are the mechanic. So as a mechanic, you are able to combine things kind of on the fly. So in the past Dead Risings, you had to... Oh, that is hilarious. In the past Dead Risings, you basically had to go to specific places in order to do any sort of like crafting type stuff, whereas this one really aimed to seamlessly expand that concept so that you could just build things like vehicles and, you know, cool weapons just really anywhere at any given time. And, you know, they had all the silly costumes and all the silly sort of concepts and stuff that you expect from Dead Rising, but it did have a little bit more of a mature, darkened sort of edge to it as well. You know, it was kind of still in line with the previous Dead Rising games. I think it did expand things kind of nicely as well. The DLC was kind of like a bunch of little short story type missions. I think they were about an hour long. I remember doing them and not necessarily being like kind of blown away, if that makes sense. Like, I was kind of like, oh, you know, whatever. You get what I mean? Like, I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's some extra stuff, and, you know, it was okay, but I wasn't like necessarily super excited about any of them, and I don't think any of them were super memorable. Although I do believe one of them did star a particular character that did have a bit of a reoccurrence, as to say, within this one. I do want to keep things a little spoiler-free in regards to some of the stuff that goes on. But yeah, you know, kind of your typical mission structuring as well, where you've got to get to certain places, do certain things. And then on top of that, you've also got like all these side adventures. And then when you finish things, you can kind of just keep going and whatnot. Like, this really was, I think especially compared to, like, Dead Rising 4, this was a lot more in line with the traditional offerings within the franchise. I take it there's a psychopath over at the XXX store. You know, like that movie series. Not like anything else it would be. But it was cool because this was a game where, like, as you've been seeing, you just kind of go from space to space and you just freely explore. Well, it is actually like a decently large kind of open world environment. Like, I always really enjoyed the Dead Rising series. I don't know if everyone was always, like, as huge about it as I was, but I always thoroughly enjoyed what the Dead Rising games had to offer. I just thought they were such a fun, ridiculous, over-the-top experience, and it was always something, to me, that was fun and engaging, and particularly, like, the sandbox modes. Like, I always have just the softest spot for Dead Rising 2 off the record. I absolutely love that one in its sandbox. And while, you know, I don't know if Dead Rising 4 really quite hit the mark, you know, I still have a soft spot for each of the entries in the series. That one, a little, you know, didn't quite hit it for me as well as these other ones, but Dead Rising 3, I think, is actually a really good entry in the series, and perhaps a little more overlooked too, just because it was like a launch, you know, kind of Xbox title, like Xbox One title. And Sledge Saw, okay, let's do it. And I think that did maybe make some people overlook this too much, because it is still, like, a really, really cool, crazy sort of game. Like, just wild weapons going on in this one. And, yeah, lots of guns too, like the expansions. Like, they really did expand your gun offerings and your weapon offerings in some exciting ways. I can't believe I killed, like, 84,000 individuals. I wonder if there's any sort of, like, big achievements I have left. I'm actually pretty good. Oh yeah, the training medals, the PP trials, you know, always about the PP trials. Create every combo weapon. I actually did pretty good, except for the collection collectibles challenge, right? Yeah, I actually did not too bad in that regard. Whoa! Oh, and another really cool thing, I guess I should have maybe mentioned right off the bat, is online co-op. So you could play with a buddy if you'd like to and tear things up, which is rather nice. I'm making my way over here because there is, like, a vehicle. You know, it's got the day-night kind of cycle going on, and you can, you know, again, explore the different areas, because we're, like, in the beginning area. And then there's this section. This section's really cool, too. I quite like. There's more of a Hollywood section. But, like, you know, the map is, to a degree, a little probably basic in comparison to, you know, what we're seeing in open world games today. But, again, at the time, it was decently impressive just because it's dense. You know what I mean? We actually have lots of buildings you can go into. There's lots of crowds that are actually everywhere doing stuff. You know, it had that sort of level of dense areas to it that a lot of other kind of games really didn't necessarily do at that point in the console generation. This was always fun. I believe there's, like, I might have missed it. Usually there's a couple vehicles you can combo. I don't know if it's down there. It's like a big roller and then something else, and you can combo those vehicles for just, like, an absolutely deadly sort of thing. Like, they really did make it so that you could just absolutely roll down the undead in a way, like, unlike we'd ever seen in the series before. Maybe it's because I'm like a replay kind of thing, and that's why I don't have access to the vehicles. Usually there's a vehicle and then you just, like, combine it with, like, a big rolling thing. You just, like, smush all the zombies like they're nothing, which is always very entertaining. But, you know, it's got all those trademark things, and I think this was really kind of an important title for the Xbox platform at the time. Like, they actually really needed some wins, and I think this was a good showcase, because traditionally I've always considered the Dead Rising series to be very close on the Xbox side of things, always a very important, you know, franchise to the platform, even though it is not necessarily a first party kind of franchise, you did have the exclusivity of the original and 3, and then 4 was timed, and I think did 2 have some sort of thing too? I don't know. But, the Dead Rising series has always been a very big franchise, and always something I've really liked, and something that was always a good showcase of Xbox console platforms whenever they did release. Oh, this is ridiculous. These are all like the big inmate guys. They're, why are you around all the inmate zombies? These guys are terrifying. They're as if they're from, what is that? Dead Island. Yeah, they're like the Dead Island inmates that are just ridiculous. Like, look at them. They take like multiple hits of my combo weapons. At least I get a lot of PP from it. And then the game had a good selection of, I guess you would say, skill points. Yeah, the attribute points is what they are in this. And with those attribute points, you're able to really improve your character in more expansive ways, which is exciting. Yes, here we go. We finally got a car going, even if it's just a taxi. Yeah, you can see the big central city in the backdrop there. But yeah, this is such an interesting thing. And I know that, like, tech-wise, they kind of hide the way that the open world is done. Kind of like the way it loads in is quite fascinating. So I think they really, to me, they quite nailed this. I really did genuinely like this game when it came out. I thought this was, kind of an impressive showcase at the time. I kind of wanted that vehicle. Am I supposed to help this guy, or is Jeremy just cool? He's just living up there. Like, it doesn't really have a clear objective. Like, clear the zombies and he's safe kind of thing, so I'm assuming he's fine. Oh, there's the dragon thing there. You're also a lot more kind of limber, I guess would be the phrasing for this one. Like, you move around a lot. Kind of easier in this game compared to other ones. Like, you do actually you're very spry. I guess that's because you're a bit of a younger character too, in comparison to what we got with the the other Dead Rising games. The characters were, I think, a bit older, right? Like, at the times of those ones going on. Alright, so this area is fun too. This is like, I believe, kind of the fancier neighborhood to a degree, some of the businesses and stuff. Just kind of wish it was more daytime, but kind of like really makes the lights and stuff pop too, with all the differing zombies and whatnot. But yeah, so many different places to visit. And the zombies, they just kind of almost dynamically pour out into the areas that you're going. So there's just, there's always zombies that you have to deal with. They always find their way into whatever space you're going, which I think is nice. Like, they're annoying because they're the undead trying to eat you, but they're not like, oh, I can't do anything. It's an amazing balance that they were able to strike for this, where it's like, hey, there's so many zombies, but also, oh yeah, the Slappy's Ultimate Playhouse, but also not that you feel like you're overwhelmed. And I think that in itself is a very delicate kind of act to pull off, is doing that kind of balancing. A pogo stick? Can I ride the pogo stick, or do I hit people with it? Yeah, it looks like I hit people with the pogo stick. There's so many ridiculous weapons in this. I think there's like I believe there's like a high school place you go into too. Yeah, oh, actually, you know what? Speaking of DLC, there was the main missions. But there was also like a mini golf, ultra insane mini golf kind of game. That was really, really cool. That was fun. It was like super, mega, ultra, infinity, whatever mini golf. And that was utterly ridiculous. I think there was like Capcom characters thrown in there too. You had like some Mega Man stuff in that. That was really, really entertaining. They did a really good job with this game in terms of just stuff. And I mean, I don't think the DLC was like to any degree mind-blowing, like I've said, but I think they were just trying to get something kind of post-launch to support this one with extra content, because Xbox was like needing, some kind of content for it. I do wish they would have went a little bit more crazy with the DLC. Like, I do feel like they could have done more with it. Because it feels like they told the story they wanted to tell, and then they wanted to leave the narrative open to if they were to do something with the next Dead Rising. Which they kind of really didn't do, did they? A DVD player. Oh yeah, DVD was still a thing, right? Fancy painting. This game just kills me so much. It's like... There's so many weapons and things. And this is what they need to do, is go back to like what made Dead Rising so interesting and just kind of like rebuild it, honestly. I think at this point, like there's so much cool stuff in this series. And this, this is impressive still. I'm still impressed by this game. I don't know if other people feel that level of like, whoa, and whatnot, but I really do. Like, I think back to like that generation and being like, what kind of wowed me right off the bat. Obviously we had, like, Rise was pretty interesting, we had Forza, but for me it was really Dead Rising 3 that kind of set the stage for kind of what I was hoping where we would see technology continue to kind of develop was going to be like, what other crazy things are they going to be able to achieve? I think it was less focused on like resolution stuff and more focused on kind of the technology side of things, I would say, at the time. And now, obviously, I'm a little bit... Ooh, 3 days before the bombs drop. Obviously, now I care a bit more about the resolution. And yeah, it's a little bit jaggedy and stuff, and the higher frame rate would be awesome to have at some point if they could ever achieve that, but... I don't know if they're going to go back and do that, and if we're just kind of stuck here, but hopefully... Maybe we see this, like, remastered at some point. I guess it would really come down to how the licensing sort of handled. Because obviously... Oh, hey, look, it's Jason. Obviously there is the Xbox sort of publishing on the first game, right? And then you have to really... Am I supposed to kill the zombies? Yeah, so I wonder if that's maybe a big holdback, is them not going to do any sort of remastering thing unless Xbox wants to make that happen. Because it's still, it's relatively fine, but... Yeah, it would be nice to see this one cleaned up, because I think it would look a lot better, and you could maybe fix some things up. I don't think I was supposed to kill those guys. I wasn't even listening to what he was saying, to be honest. I think he's mad because I killed... Was that his family? Ow! I took that hit. I'm probably concussed, but it's okay. I'm moving around again. Everything is fine. Everything is absolutely fine. An LMG, thank you. Should I make Freedom Bear? Nah, I don't need to make Freedom Bear. I need to just go and rip it up with the LMG. But overall, I'd say, like, Dead Rising 3, story-wise, still pretty fun, worth playing. I mean, if you've played other entries in the series, I think this one is kind of an important sort of Dead Rising game, like in the narrative. But I guess it doesn't really make sense since the story didn't... Like, the overall franchise of Dead Rising didn't really get to some sort of conclusive point with its narrative, I guess. We'll probably never know what the end goal was, and they probably don't even the developers working on it probably didn't even think of any sort of, like, ending or anything. Probably just gonna keep going long-term and just skipping along the time. But I guess one cool thing with the Dead Rising franchise was that there was actual time progression. I know that sounds weird, but, like, aside from, these days, we have so many days to get stuff done. It was also a game where, like, each entry, there was actually time that had passed. Like, the characters got older, younger characters grew up. There was that actual sense of aging, which very few franchises, especially in the gaming industry, ever seem to actually be able to work towards. So that is actually kind of an impressive touch, too, is the fact that they did aim to kind of give us something where time went by and, the characters were in different places over time. But that was always kind of cool. But I like Dead Rising 3. I think it's pretty fun. like it's still worth diving into if you haven't already. And it's a pretty cool game here, and it runs pretty well for the Series S platform. At least I think so.